we come to the 12th hexagram. Standstill. The quality of restraint and the importance of meditation and inaction in confronting temptation. This is the right angle cross of Eden. There's some great jokes here, by the way. I'm not going to tell you all of them. The right angle cross of Eden is a 12 and the 11, the 36 and the 6. Yes. You know, that temptation that's there in the 12. And one of the nicer jokes for me, of course, is that Eden, the fall from grace, 12 is pointed towards grace. I don't know whether that's falling down or rising up. Or the 12th gate is the gate of articulation. It has the capacity within it, like the 35th gate, to be resistant to the emotional wave. It says, I know I can try if I'm in the mood. If I'm in the mood. The most important description for individuals is mood. And that individuality always operates at its best when the individual is in the mood and when the other is in the mood for the individual. That's grace. This cross of Eden, whoever comes in on the cross of Eden leaves paradise and enters into the world. They all do. And they will live it out in their lives. This is a great gate of mutation, for it is the gate out of which we began to speak. So in the 12th gate there is the gift of language, there is the gift of poetry. There is the gift of music. The 1222 is the most musical of all channels. It is actually biologically the place of our breath and the inside of us that is outside. Our esophagus and stomach, our intestines. You see, the 12th gate is where the metamorphosis took place in the human larynx that stopped us from being able to drink and breathe at the same time like our primate relatives, like earlier examples of Homo. And when this mutation took place in the 12th gate, the larynx opened up and we were able to articulate both what we call consonants and vowels. You still see that stage in babies until they get to the point where they start spitting up. They can breathe and drink at the same time, and then the mutation clicks in. So this is not only a channel of music, but it's a channel of gas. The first line is the monk. It says withdrawal that can only be maintained with communal support. The 12th gate is the only social mechanism available to the individual. And it is the social mechanism of being a stranger of consequence. Being able to have individual or unique impact and then withdrawing. This is a gate of great caution. It's as suspicious as individuals can be. Venus exalted, the beauty and harmony possible beyond the reach of temptation. The emotional system is the place of temptation. This is where the apple is. This is where sex is. This is where pleasure is. This is where pain is. This is where power is. This great seduction and temptation of the emotional system to the rest of the vehicle. In the White Book, the expression of social withdrawal and its value when supported by others. In other words, how important it is for the individual to realize that familiarity breeds contempt. That the individual is valuable and mutative in small doses, with space in between. The Jupiter in detriment. I'm enjoying this. I have both my Uranuses in the 12th gate in this first line. And Jupiter right now is in the 22nd hexagram, which happens to me approximately every 11 or 12 years. And every 11 or 12 years, I find myself leaving wherever I've been and finding some place further away. So here I am. Simon the Stylite, total and often absurd withdrawal. Simon the Stylite was a North African monk in the in the first millennium. And he sat on top of a pillar that used to be part of a Roman ruin. And that was his way of being closer to God. And he didn't come down for 47 years. Absurd withdrawal. Absurd expression of social caution and extreme withdrawal from emotional contact. The people who have this detriment rarely are going to quickly or openly embrace the emotional system. Because instantaneously you have a manifesting channel. Learn to look at channels through the eye of type. It will enrich your understanding of how they work. There are very few channels that are manifesting channels. Very few. And these main manifesting channels, 2 of them are emotional. So we get to see that it's so much easier for the emotional energy to enter into the world, to enter into manifestation. And these 3 gates that we've been looking at in a row, the 35, the 45, and the 12, these 3 gates go directly to motors. They have a lot in common with each other. The second line, purification. These are real hermits. These are real social hermits. Now remember, this is one of the ironies of understanding structure. Here you have a social channel. It's the only social channel of the individual. You can see already that the first line is about sitting on a pillar and being separate. It's not like this is about being social. This lower trigram is involved in its own process and will take all social contact as risk. And social contact is something to be afraid of because they may be threatened by that social contact. This is where celibacy comes from. Celibacy is in the 12th gate. It says it's not worth it at any level. I'd rather be just pure and cool. So the second line of purification, rigorous withdrawal from negative influences. Rigorous withdrawal. And by the way, negative, of course, is relative. It's relative. What they're always referring to is the solar plex at the other end. But there are those who are uncomfortable with the solar plex that's high in the wave, And there are those people who are uncomfortable with the solar plexus at the low end of the wave. It will differ. Saturn exalted. The discipline to maintain a pure state. These are people that can truly be celibate, and celibate in all kinds of ways. I'm never going to use coffee. That's it. Over. They can really do that. In the White Book, the expression of disciplined social caution. Mercury in detriment, the boredom that arises out of a lack of stimulation. Caution that manifests boredom and is expressed desire for stimulus. And what happens, of course, is second lines are always being knocked on. It's not like that 12-2 can say, I'm going to stay in a pure state and I'm in control of that. It can't, because it doesn't know it's in a pure state. It's wandering around naked in its kitchen. It does not know it's in a pure state. It's the other that comes, and the moment they come, that's the moment in recognizing the difference, the impact on themselves, that they're going to make their subjective call about whether that's a positive or a negative influence. But they only know they're in a pure state in comparison to the contact with the other. If nobody bothers them, if they're born in a cave and live in the cave and stay in the cave, they're fine. They're in a pure state. Mercury in detriment, that boredom. This is in our codon system, that is in our genetic structure. There are certain gates that are certain codons that are stop codons. There's only one start codon. The only start codon, that is, if you could imagine the genetic code as a sentence or a paragraph, that the capital letter at the beginning of each sentence, this would be a start codon. This is the 41st hexagram. And the 41st hexagram, this hexagram that begins the experience process, this hexagram of hunger, this is the start of all experiences. This boredom, being cut off in that way, not having the ability to be able to share the mutation. And without the discipline, these people can get called out, and of course they go through all kinds of emotional difficulties. The 12th hexagram is important for us in another way. That is, each of the lines of the 12th hexagram represent a stage in our evolutionary process. In terms of the lines, we are in the 5th line stage, and we are waiting for the 6th. The mutation that comes through the 12-6 is ultimately the mutation that will be able to express and explain emotional awareness. Emotional awareness will actually evolve out of the 55-6. And when our global cycle in 2027 begins with the 55-6, that's when these children will begin to come into the world. Ultimately, it is the 12-6 that is going to be able to express it. In terms of our evolution, it was not until we got to the 4th line stage that we actually began to communicate. And it's one of those things to see that there is an enormous amount of silence in this gate of articulation when you're in the lower trigram. Silence. 3rd line is confession. The process of self-analysis. Neptune exalted. I hope you get the joke. I mean, the process of self-analysis, Neptune exalted. Wonderful. What are you supposed to see through that veil? Anything in particular? You know, threes bang into things. You know, with that veil over their face, they don't really know what they're going to bang into. They just sort of got kind of fuzzy shapes in front of them. The recognition of inadequacies and the purging of unjustified vanities. The expression of inadequacies in social interaction that leads to self-analysis and caution. Now, by the way, that's not a disease. It's classic of third line. The third line is a freak that is designed at some level to be social, and it doesn't really know how to do that. So, you know, it blunders in. You know, it sits down and there's 9 forks and 12 spoons, and it starts using its fingers. You know, it's going to get burnt in that process. And out of that trial and error, it will learn. Neptune exalted. I hope you get the joke. I mean, you know, the process of self-analysis, Neptune exalted. Wonderful. What are you supposed to see through that veil? Anything in particular? You know, threes bang into things. You know, with that veil over their face, they don't really know what they're going to bang into. They just sort of got kind of fuzzy shapes in front of them. The recognition of inadequacies and the purging of unjustified vanities. The expression of inadequacies in social interaction that leads to self-analysis and caution. Now, by the way, that's not a disease. It's classic of third line. The third line is a freak that is designed at some level to be social, and it doesn't really know how to do that. So, you know, it blunders in. You know, it sits down and there's 9 forks and 12 spoons, and it starts using its fingers. You know, it's going to get burnt in that process. And out of that trial and error, it will learn. The detriment, the Marsan detriment, one of the detriments that give detriments a bad name, which always pleases me, because the more fixed you get on detriments being bad, ultimately you'll come to a point of just going mad and cracking. It's not real. A perverse. People don't like this word. You know, you get a 58-2, and they got perversion. You know what I say to them? I say, you know, this is the cross of healing. Oh, Lord. A perverse and often exaggerated self-hatred. Inadequacies in social interaction that leads to the expression of self-hatred. They really get burnt. Now look, that self-hatred, the individual, because it is rejected regularly, has to be fairly thick-skinned to begin with. There is an enormous amount of pain in that. And remember that the real theme of standstill is that it's a stop codon. It's a stop codon. It's the period at the end of the sentence. And because it's the period at the end of the sentence, there really is that pause, because there is no need to begin a new sentence. There's no need to continue. That's a period. By the way, the 56 and the 35 and the 12, these are the 3 stop codons, the 3 stop hexagrams. So there's this trial and error that takes place that is painful. And by the way, it's as painful in the exalted as it is in the detriment. It's just the pain's lived out differently. And it is the 12 threes that recognize that to be social is something that is deeply profound and difficult. And that until they can master the emotional system, they can find no grace. You see, it looks like the undefined emotional people are the most graceful. You look at dancers' charts. They look like they can be the most graceful. But the greatest grace in the world is the aware emotional being. They are like water moving. They are like clouds drifting. There is perfection in all of that. It's so important to keep in balance respect for the nature of the emotional system, despite the chaos that it brings to us as it functions now. No one knows that better than a 12. The 35 is never going to be aware. The 12 carries the mutative force and recognizes that. It's only when you get to the transpersonal that you get to the place where mutation must be passed on. Must be passed on. And you get to this fourth line, you get to the line of the prophet out of the garden. You get to the upper trigram, you get to this externalizing. And the prophet represents something very interesting. It represents the primary capacity to be able to articulate in words. It is our ability to communicate to each other in language, and it's where that mutation took place. And at the same time, its polarity is that you cannot speak at all, that you can be mute, that you can have speech defects, that you lisp, that you stutter. All of that rooted in this mutative line where we began our ability to be able to articulate, so it's expressed in the line, the prophet. The ability to foresee and plan for the end of standstill. It's talking about itself. The ability to be able to see the right moment to let go of caution, to enter into the emotional field at the right moment, in the right mood, so that mutation can take place, to find grace. And the Mercury in detriment, the voice in the wilderness. The voice that nobody hears, or the voice that cannot come out at all. The express need for social interaction that falls on deaf ears, not being heard. Now, if you have somebody who has the 12-4 and they have the detriment and they stutter, that's exactly what they're supposed to be. And you'll discover something. That the only reason that people stutter is that they're afraid of strangers. It's the only reason they stutter. And the people that they know well and they know the longest, their speech automatically is different. There is simply a deep fear of what is possible negatively out of the emotional system. When you get to the last 7 minutes, 30 seconds of this fourth line, you step into the juxtaposition cross, and it's called the juxtaposition cross of articulation. And it's made up of the 12, the 11, and then two gates of the vessel of love, the 25 and the 46. 12, 11, 25, 46. This cross of articulation, you can imagine what that's like. These are people that are fixed on externalizing their knowing, externalizing their mutation and speaking it out. And of course, they give up all caution in that way and end up, well, having to deal with the consequences of that. Recognize that those who come in on juxtaposed crosses, they are essential ingredients in the dynamic. They are a bridge between the right and the left. But they are very, very fixed in that and can never fully embrace either side. They cannot break. They do not bend. They do everything possible in their life to stay on that single track. And of course, they get the consequences of that. The left angle. When you step into the fifth line, you have the left angle cross of education. And when you come to the fifth line, this is our evolutionary position now and has been since around 1615. In other words, during this time, we have had the greatest expansion in the education of our species ever. To the point that education is something for most of humanity, about 2/3 of humanity, that is a natural right. And never before in the history of our species has that been so. So this left angle cross of education is the combination of this ability to articulate with love, universal love, the love of the body. And that articulation is also present in the 11, this gate of ideas, this gate where the history of human experience can be codified and presented. The fifth line is the pragmatist. The success of restraint lies in not abandoning the lessons learnt when the phase ends. It's already about lessons and learning. It's already about education. And when you come to the fifth line, this is our evolutionary position now and has been since around 1615. In other words, during this time, we have had the greatest expansion in the education of our species ever. To the point that education is something for most of humanity, about 2/3 of humanity, that is a natural right. And never before in the history of our species has that been so. So this left angle cross of education is the combination of this ability to articulate with love, universal love, the love of the body. And that articulation is also present in the 11, this gate of ideas, this gate where the history of human experience can be codified and presented. The fifth line is the pragmatist. The success of restraint lies in not abandoning the lessons learnt when the phase ends. It's already about lessons and learning. It's already about education. The sun exalted. Light is always conscious of darkness. I have great timing, don't I? The sun exalted, you'll notice that if it's a cross and you've got your sun there, that you only get that side. It's an interesting thing to understand, that most of the people that will carry the cross of education, all the fifth lines that will carry that cross of education, those are the ones where light is always conscious of darkness. It's just interesting to note. Caution as an expression of social experience. In other words, the pragmatist is just that. Yes, the emotions can be gooey and sticky, but the emotions can really be great. And if I'm pragmatic and I'm practical, I'll find those right moments to be able to enter into that social contract and a way to be able to get out safely. Pragmatism. And because we know the nature of the fifth line, that the fifth line has to be practical in times of crisis, that they're only going to enter into that kind of communion with the other in moments when it's really not only practical to do it, but it's necessary to do it. And that's a key for the individual. The Mars and detriment, the tendency to remember only the most painful lessons learnt. Caution, which is conditioned by the most painful social experiences. So what we've got here is two kinds of talk shows. No, really, you got the nice talk show, the wise talk show, the one that's going to tell you how to look after your kids and make your wife happy. And the other one is the horror talk show, where you talk about what it's like to have kids that are monsters and partners that are beasts. No, it's true, isn't it? And everybody watches their favorite, don't they? The power of seduction. I mean, after all, fifth lines are all about seduction. It's the power of seduction. It's very seductive. The one advantage that we have is that in terms of incarnation crosses, at least they're coming in on the light side, which is interesting to see. The sixth line. As I said, we are in a fifth line stage evolutionarily. And in the next century, in the coming years, we're going to begin the process of entering into the sixth stage. This is the end of a mutative chain. It's the beyond even the process. That is, it's the roof of the house. So it's beyond the process. It is called metamorphosis. It says faith in and energy applied towards change and the emergence from standstill. Creative transcendence that when connected to the harmonic gate 22 through the channel of openness leads to successful mutation and the emergence of a new social form. And you'll notice that this particular line, a line of great importance because it is out of the 12th gate that mutation is expressed. It's expressed and explained that this is also a Sun-Earth combination. And so when you think about this left angle cross of education, you'll see that when it comes to the sixth line, you're going to have the Sun people and you're going to have the Earth people, and they're very different. It says something about what's going to happen when the mutation comes. That there will be a resistance to the mutation. That there are those who will accept the new form, recognize the new form, embrace the new form. And there will be those that reject the new form out of fear. Because if you think that the emotional system is powerful now, wait till it's aware and penetrates in a way that we have no experience with. And these children will come into the world ill-equipped. So the sixth line speaks of the future better than most lines, because it tells you what metamorphosis always brings. It always brings the same thing. The positive adaptation to mutation and the negative resistance to mutation. Always. And it isn't to say that those that resist the mutation are bad. The fetus in the womb mutates and goes through many stages. When it gets rid of its capacity to breathe water, does not mean that that apparatus is bad. It just no longer serves a purpose. And it must resist the mutation because it's not its job to mutate and stay with the body. It's its job to complete itself and be done with it. So this is not about good or bad. But it does tell you about the basic binary. It says that you cannot have everyone participate in the totality as one. You cannot. Half. Half of anything is perfect. So metamorphosis. In the White Book, the capacity to mutate and express new social forms, or the perfected adaptation to caution that can accept social limitations. And of course, this is the part where they simply can see that, can recognize it, but still not be able to participate in it. 12/6s try. One of the most common things that happens to 12/6s is that against their will and against their dream, when they're young, they're often put into boarding houses or sleepaway schools or this kind of thing. They end up in social situations that they don't belong in, and they quickly recognize that. And that's their way of getting burnt. Getting into the social matrix and then suddenly realizing what that does for them, and then slowly moving away to take on the natural caution of the 12th gate, to back away from the social interaction. But the sixth line is waiting for the mutation, because it carries that genetically. It's waiting for a different kind of social interaction. When those babies come into the world, it is those beings around them, the parents around them, who carry 6 lines, wherever they may be, but particularly those who carry the 6 lines in this stream of emoting that moves from the 39 to the 55, 22, and all the way up. Because through that 6th line, they will have a way of being able to reach out and to be able to comfort these children. At its mundane level now, very little happens with the 12-6. Very little happens. It's really like it's dormant, waiting. And they're not very social as a result of that. They're waiting for a new kind of social phenomena. Waiting for a new kind of social phenomena, logically I would guess, leads you to the love of humanity and duty.